My boyfriend left me in ICU with my jaw wired shut and no one by my side. When I served him with the hospital bill, his mother smirked and said, "You should have never woken up." I stayed silent. That was 3 months ago. Yesterday, she was arrested for stalking me. My boyfriend proposed to me in a grocery store parking lot. It wasn't romantic, but when he said, "I know this isn't perfect, but you are," I said yes, without thinking. That was Monday. By Friday, I was in the ICU. My spine shattered, my jaw wired shut, my face tore open, and worst of all, there was no us when I woke up. No flowers by my bed, no calls on my phone, not even a text, just beeping monitors and nurses who looked at me with pity. See, my boyfriend was the kind of man who controlled through rules, not fists. No driving at night, no crop tops, no posting without his approval. But he never hit me, so I told myself it wasn't abuse. The engagement felt like proof I was safe. The night of our car crash, we were out to dinner celebrating. He drank too much. I offered to drive. He said no. I finally pushed back and told him he treated me more like a prop than a partner. He laughed and said, "You think anyone else would want you?" He then shoved me in the passenger seat and started driving. The ride home was silent, and then lights, screeching metal, blackout. I was told later that I was pulled from the wreck with 3 cracked ribs, spinal fractures, and a metal rod now keeping my jaw together. The surgeon said I'd walk again, but it won't be the same. It's not. My legs burn every time I stand. I can't smile fully, can't chew right. But what hurt more was the fact that he didn't visit until day 3. When he finally walked in, empty-handed, eyes darting everywhere but me, he said, "I didn't mean for it to get this bad. You always make everything worse." I asked if he still wanted to marry me. He just said, "I don't do well with caretaking." Then he left. And just like that, I was alone again. That's when his mom stepped in, not with compassion, but with gaslighting. "He's hurting too," she texted. "You don't know what that crash did to him." She sent me therapy links for him. Then the smear campaign started. He told people I grabbed the wheel, that I was suing him for sympathy. My friends believed him and stopped responding. Someone from my own family even said I caused it and was now playing victim. My physical therapist, Zoe, was the first person who didn't treat me like a cautionary tale. I had known her for years, but we were never close until she asked me if I wanted revenge or healing. I said, "Why not both?" That's when we staged the goodbye lunch. I had Zoe help me draft a fake message from his mom, asking me to help set up a surprise dinner for his birthday. We told her I felt guilty, I felt bad, I wanted to make it up to him in the way I know best. Of course, she fell for it. She took me up on it and even helped me prepare the surprise. On the big day, he walked in, and when he saw me standing there, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. He said, "You shouldn't be here." I smiled at him. "You're right, but I want to give you something first." I then handed him a box. Inside the box, the ring he gave me, which after research cost $75. And beneath the ring laid a neatly folded hospital invoice for $187,000, with his name listed as the responsible driver, highlighted in pink. "I'm returning what doesn't belong to me," I said. He opened his mouth to speak. I cut him off. "You did enough when you watched me choke on my own blood and couldn't be bothered to show up." I looked at his mother. "You wanted a daughter-in-law you could control. Instead, you raised a coward." I left without another word. That night, she called me. I let it go to voicemail. "You know," she said, "if you really cared about him, you would have died in that crash." That hurt, but I didn't cry. I just saved the voicemail and started laughing, because I was about to use that voicemail much more than they could ever imagine. Not that I wanted to, though. At first, I thought I was done with them. I really did. I moved into a small apartment closer to the physical therapy center. The place was tiny, but mine. No one checking when I came home or monitoring what I wore. Zoe helped me find a support group for survivors of domestic abuse. I started making real progress, both physically and mentally. I could walk short distances without my cane on good days. I even went on a coffee date with a guy from my building. Nothing serious, just friendly conversation, but it felt good to be treated like a normal person again. Then about 3 months after the crash, I got a message request on Instagram from someone I didn't know. Her name was Vanessa. Her profile was private with just a few photos, mostly landscapes and coffee cups, nothing revealing. I almost ignored it, but something made me accept. Her first message sent chills down my spine. "I'm dating Ryan now. I think I'm in trouble." I stared at my phone for a long time. Part of me wanted to block her immediately. I'd finally started putting my life back together. The last thing I needed was to get pulled back into his toxic world. But another part of me couldn't ignore someone who might be going through what I did. I remembered how alone I felt, how nobody believed me. I responded with a simple, "What's going on?" and waited. Her reply came quickly. She told me they'd been dating for about 2 months. Things started great, but now he was checking her phone, telling her what to wear, getting angry when she went out with friends. Classic Ryan. Then she dropped the bombshell. She was 8 weeks pregnant and terrified. She included a photo of a positive pregnancy test with today's date written on a notepad beside it. My stomach knotted up. I thought about ignoring her, about protecting myself, but I couldn't. I told her about my experience, about the crash, about how he abandoned me when I needed him most. I even mentioned his mother's involvement. Vanessa seemed shocked but grateful. She asked if I had any proof of what happened. That's when I decided to send her the voicemail from his mom, the one where she said I should have died in the crash. I hesitated before hitting send. Something felt off. The timing was too convenient, her story too familiar, but I pushed the feeling aside and sent it anyway. That was my first mistake. 3 days passed with no response from Vanessa. I figured she was processing everything, or maybe had decided to stay with him after all. Then I came home from physical therapy to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart raced as I pushed it open. The place had been ransacked, drawers pulled out, clothes scattered everywhere. My laptop was gone, along with the backup hard drive I kept my important documents on. I called the police right away, but I already knew who was behind it. Vanessa had forwarded everything to Ryan. She'd never been in trouble. She was bait, and I fell for it. I filed a police report, but they weren't much help. The officer who came to my apartment just looked around, took some notes, and basically told me there wasn't much they could do without evidence. He suggested I install a security camera and change my locks. Thanks, Captain Obvious. I didn't mention Ryan or Vanessa. I had no proof it was them, and I didn't want to sound like some crazy ex making accusations. After the cop left, I called Zoe in tears. She came over right away with takeout and helped me clean up the mess. While we were sorting through my scattered belongings, I realized something else was missing. My medical records folder. I kept copies of everything related to the accident. Hospital bills, doctor's notes, physical therapy plans, and photos of my injuries. Ryan now had all of it. "This is seriously messed up," Zoe said as she helped me fold clothes back into drawers. "You need to be careful. These people are unhinged." I spent that night at Zoe's place, too freaked out to stay alone. The next morning, I went to get my locks changed and bought a cheap security camera that connected to my phone. Not exactly Fort Knox, but it was something. I was just starting to feel a little safer when I walked out to the parking lot and found all 4 of my tires slashed. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, standing there in the rain. I'd spent most of my savings on medical bills not covered by insurance. Now I needed to somehow come up with money for new tires. I called an Uber to get to work and spent the whole ride trying not to cry. When I got to the small accounting firm where I'd recently started working part-time, my boss Mark took one look at my face and asked what was wrong. I broke down and told him everything. He was surprisingly understanding and even offered to lend me money for the tires. I thanked him but declined. I'd been dependent on someone before and it hadn't ended well. Still, his kindness meant a lot. That evening, Zoe drove me to my car with with a can of Fix-A-Flat, thinking maybe we could patch things up enough to get to a tire shop. But when we arrived, I found a note tucked under the windshield wiper. It simply said, "Back off or worse." The handwriting was unfamiliar, probably Vanessa's. "We need to call the police again," Zoe insisted. I shook my head. "And tell them what? That I got a vague, threatening note?" They already didn't care about my break-in. The next day, I got a text from an unknown number. "We know where you work now too." My blood ran cold. I showed my phone to Mark, who immediately walked me to my desk and helped me gather my things. "Take a few days off," he said. "Work from home. I'll tell everyone you're sick." I was grateful but also angry. Why was I the one hiding? Why was I the one whose life was being disrupted? I hadn't done anything wrong except try to warn another woman about a dangerous man. That night, I got a call from my mom. She sounded worried. "Honey, Ryan's mother called me today. She said you've been harassing them, that you need psychiatric help." I couldn't believe it. "Mom, that's not true. They broke into my apartment. They slashed my tires. They're threatening me." There was a pause. "Are you sure, sweetie? Because Linda seemed really concerned about you. She said Ryan is trying to move on with his new girlfriend, and you keep contacting them." My own mother didn't believe me. I hung up and threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall with a crack but didn't break, just like me, I guess. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of notifications. Someone had created a fake Instagram account in my name and was sending disturbing messages to people I knew. The profile picture was from my hospital stay, one of the photos that had been on my stolen laptop. The messages made me sound unstable and obsessed with Ryan. One sent to my cousin read, "I can't stop thinking about him. I'm going to make him pay for leaving me." I spent hours reporting the account and messaging people to explain it wasn't me. Some believed me, others didn't respond. I felt like I was drowning. That afternoon, I got another message from Vanessa. "He knows you sent me that voicemail. He's really angry. I'm scared of what he might do." I wasn't falling for it this time. "Stop pretending," I wrote back. "I know you're working with him. Leave me alone." She responded with a photo that made my stomach drop. It was a picture of me, taken earlier that day through my apartment window. I was sitting on my couch looking at my phone. They were watching me. I called Zoe in a panic. "I need to get out of here. They're stalking me." "Come stay with me again," she offered immediately. I packed a bag and ordered an Uber. As I was waiting outside my building, a car slowed down nearby. Ryan was driving with Vanessa in the passenger seat. They didn't stop, just drove by slowly enough for me to see them clearly. Vanessa stared at me with a blank expression. Ryan smirked. It was a power move, letting me know they could find me whenever they wanted. My Uber arrived and I practically jumped inside. "Can you drive around the block first?" I asked the driver. "I think someone's following me." The driver, an older man named Walter according to the app, glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Everything okay, miss?" "Not really," I admitted. "My ex is harassing me." Walter nodded grimly. "My daughter went through something similar. Where are we really headed?" I gave him Zoe's address and he took a circuitous route, making sure no one was following us. When we arrived, he refused to let me pay. "Stay safe," he said, "and don't be afraid to ask for help." I spent the next few days hiding out at Zoe's place, barely leaving except for physical therapy. Even there, I was constantly looking over my shoulder. My therapist, Dr. Chen, noticed my anxiety and suggested I talk to someone professional about the psychological trauma. "Physical healing is only part of recovery," she said gently. I nodded but didn't commit to anything. I couldn't afford another medical expense right now. Besides, I was more concerned with immediate safety than long-term mental health. One morning, I woke up to find 3 missed calls from my boss, Mark. When I called him back, he sounded stressed. "Someone sent an email to the entire company from your work account last night. It had inappropriate content." My heart sank. "What kind of content?" "Threats against Ryan and his family, disturbing stuff. HR is involved now." I'm trying to explain that it couldn't have been you, but they're concerned. I felt sick. They must have gotten my work password from my laptop. "I didn't send anything, Mark. I swear." "I believe you," he said, "but you need to come in and talk to HR." The meeting with HR was humiliating. I had to explain my entire history with Ryan, the accident, the recent harassment. The HR manager, a woman named Deborah with a permanently pinched expression, took notes and asked if I had any proof that I didn't send the emails. "How am I supposed to prove I didn't do something?" I asked, frustrated. "Well, we have evidence you did," she replied, turning her computer screen to show me the emails. They were vile, graphic threats that made me look completely unhinged. "These came from your account. During hours our records show you were logged in." "My apartment was broken into," I explained for what felt like 100th time. "They stole my laptop. They could have found my passwords." Deborah looked skeptical. "We'll investigate further, but for now, we're placing you on administrative leave." Just like that, I lost my income. I walked out of the office feeling defeated. Ryan was systematically destroying my life, and no one seemed able or willing to help me stop him. That evening, Zoe and I sat on her couch brainstorming what to do. "We need evidence," she said. "Something that proves they're behind all this." "Like what?" "They're being careful. The break-in, the tire slashing, the fake accounts. It's all stuff they can deny." Zoe thought for a moment. "What about setting a trap? Give them something they can't resist, but that would incriminate them if they took the bait?" The idea had merit. We spent hours planning, trying to think of something that would draw them out without putting me in more danger. Finally, we came up with a plan. I created a new email account and sent a message to Ryan's work email, which I still remembered from our relationship. The subject line was simple: insurance settlement. In the email, I wrote that I had been contacted by the insurance company about the accident. They were offering a substantial settlement, but I needed to provide additional documentation about the crash and my injuries. I mentioned that I had dashcam footage I hadn't previously disclosed that showed he was drinking before driving. This was a lie. There was no dashcam, but Ryan wouldn't know that. "You think he'll bite?" I asked Zoe after sending it. "If he thinks there's evidence that could get him in legal trouble?" "Absolutely." Sure enough, within an hour, I got a response from Ryan. "What footage?" "There was no camera in my car." I replied vaguely, saying the footage came from another source and that I had it stored on a secure cloud drive. I added that I was meeting with the insurance adjuster the following week and planned to turn over everything I had. Ryan's next email was more threatening. "You're lying, but if you do have something, you'd better delete it if you know what's good for you." Got him. This was the first direct threat I could prove came from him. I forwarded the exchange to Zoe and saved multiple copies. It wasn't enough to get him arrested, but it was a start. The next phase of our plan was riskier. I posted on social media that I was staying at a hotel for the weekend to get away from everything. I included a vague check-in at a hotel across town. In reality, I was still at Zoe's, and we had set up her apartment with hidden cameras. That night, around 2 a.m., Zoe's security system alerted us to movement outside her door. We watched on her phone as Ryan and Vanessa approached the apartment. Ryan had a small tool in his hand, presumably to pick the lock. Vanessa looked nervous, constantly glancing around. "Should we call the police?" I whispered. Zoe nodded and dialed 911, quietly explaining the situation. The dispatcher said officers were on their way, but it might take a few minutes. We watched in tense silence as Ryan worked on the lock. Just as he got the door open, we heard sirens in the distance. He froze, then grabbed Vanessa's arm and pulled her away. They ran to their car and sped off just as police lights appeared at the end of the street. The officers took our statements and viewed the security footage. They seemed to take it seriously this time, especially when I showed them the threatening emails. They said they would try to locate Ryan and Vanessa for questioning. I felt a small sense of victory, but it was short-lived. The next day, I received a series of texts from Vanessa's number. "You think you're so clever. This isn't over. He's not going to stop. I can't stop him either. Something about the tone of these messages felt different, less threatening, more desperate. I wondered if there was more to Vanessa's story than I'd assumed. What if she wasn't fully complicit? What if she was caught in Ryan's web too? I decided to take a risk and respond differently. Vanessa, if you need help getting away from him, there are resources. You don't have to do what he says. The response came quickly. You don't understand. I'm pregnant with his baby. I can't just leave. Are you really pregnant? I asked. Or was that part of the act too? There was a long pause before she replied. It wasn't an act. I'm 12 weeks now. He said you were crazy and obsessed with him. Then I found your hospital photos on his computer. He said you sent them to torment him, but that doesn't make sense. I took a deep breath. This changed things. If Vanessa was telling the truth, she might be a victim too, and she was carrying an innocent child. Has he hurt you? I asked. Not physically, but he gets so angry sometimes. He throws things, breaks things, says it's my fault for upsetting him. The familiar pattern made my skin crawl. That's how it starts, I told her. It gets worse. I know, she replied. I've seen his texts with his mom about you. The things they say, it's sick. I'm scared of what they might do to you, to me if I try to leave. I showed the messages to Zoe, who looked concerned. It could be another trap, she warned. Maybe, I agreed. But what if it's not? What if she needs help? We debated back and forth before deciding on a cautious approach. I asked Vanessa if she could meet me in a public place, a busy coffee shop downtown. She agreed, but said she'd have to be careful. Ryan monitored her location through her phone. The meeting was set for the following afternoon. I arrived early, chose a table with a clear view of the door, and asked Zoe to sit at a separate table nearby as backup. My heart was pounding as I waited, half expecting Ryan to walk in instead of Vanessa. But at exactly 2 p.m., Vanessa entered alone. She looked different from her photos, thinner, paler, with dark circles under her eyes. She spotted me and hesitated before approaching my table. I don't have much time, she said quietly, sitting down. He thinks I'm at a doctor's appointment. Up close, I noticed a fading bruise on her wrist. She saw me looking and pulled her sleeve down. It's not what you think, she said automatically. I bruise easily. I'd said similar things once. Vanessa, I'm not here to judge you. I just want to understand what's going on. She glanced around nervously before speaking. Ryan told me you were his crazy ex who couldn't let go. He showed me messages you supposedly sent him, obsessive stuff. When I found your contact info in his phone, I got jealous and messaged you. I wanted to see what you'd say about him. And then you showed him the voicemail I sent you, I said. She nodded, looking ashamed. He was so angry. He said you were trying to ruin his life with lies. That's when he took your laptop and medical records. He said he needed to protect himself from your false accusations. Did he tell you about the car accident? About how he left me in the hospital? Vanessa's eyes widened. He said you were in an accident, but that it was your fault, that you sued him for money afterward. She paused. But then I found the hospital photos on his computer, and texts between him and his mom about making sure you didn't talk about what really happened. I showed her my scars, the ones visible above my clothing. Told her about my spine, my jaw, the metal holding me together now. Her face paled further. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't know, but now I'm trapped. I'm carrying his baby. My parents are religious. They'd never support me as a single mother. I have nowhere to go. I thought about what Zoe had asked me months ago. Revenge or healing. Maybe there was a third option. Protection. Not just for me, but for Vanessa and her unborn child. There are resources, I told her. Women's shelters, support groups. You don't have to stay with him. She shook her head. You don't understand. His mother has connections everywhere. She's friends with my boss, my landlord, and Ryan. He said if I ever tried to leave him, he'd make sure I regretted it. I recognized the fear in her eyes. I'd lived with it for years. What if we could prove what he's doing? Get enough evidence that he couldn't deny it? How? She asked. I explained the plan Zoe and I had been developing. It was risky, but with Vanessa's help, it might actually work. She listened intently, occasionally glancing at her watch. I need to go soon, she said when I finished, but I want to help, not just for you, but for me and my baby. I don't want my child growing up with a father like him. We exchanged new contact information, secure email addresses that Ryan wouldn't know about. As Vanessa stood to leave, she hesitated. What if he finds out? What if this doesn't work? I thought about everything I'd been through, how close I'd come to giving up. Then we try something else. The important thing is that we're not facing him alone anymore. After she left, Zoe joined me at my table. Well, she asked. I think she's telling the truth, I said, and I think she's in danger. So what's the plan? I took a deep breath. We're going to set a trap, but this time, we're not just trying to catch Ryan doing something illegal. We're going to make sure Vanessa gets out safely too. Over the next week, Vanessa and I communicated through our secret email accounts. She provided valuable information about Ryan's schedule, his passwords, and most importantly, the location of my stolen items. Apparently, he kept everything in a storage unit rented under his mother's name. Vanessa had been there once when Ryan needed to check something in my medical files. Our plan was simple but dangerous. Vanessa would tell Ryan she needed to access the storage unit to get something she'd stored there previously. While they were there, she would secretly record him talking about the break-in and the harassment. Meanwhile, I would alert the police with the exact location and time, armed with the new evidence we had collected. The day of the plan, I was a nervous wreck. So much could go wrong. What if Ryan discovered Vanessa was recording? What if the police didn't show up in time? What if this was all an elaborate setup to lure me into a trap? Zoe tried to reassure me. The police have all the information. They know to look for Vanessa's car, and she's smart. She won't put herself in danger. I nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling of dread. At 3 p.m., I got a text from Vanessa. On our way now. He suspects nothing. I immediately called the police contact we'd established and confirmed the operation was a go. Then I waited, checking my phone every few seconds for updates. At 3:45, my phone buzzed with a new email from Vanessa. It contained an audio file and one line of text. Got it. Get help now. I played the audio with shaking hands. Ryan's voice came through clearly, boasting about breaking into my apartment, stealing my medical records, and setting up fake accounts to destroy my reputation. Vanessa had done it. She'd gotten him to confess. I forwarded the file to the police and called to confirm they'd received it. The officer told me units were already en route to the storage facility. Then silence. No updates from Vanessa. No word from the police. I paced Zoe's apartment, imagining worst-case scenarios. Had Ryan discovered Vanessa's betrayal? Was she in danger? After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered immediately. Hello? I said, my voice tight with anxiety. This is Officer Ramirez. We have Ryan in custody. Vanessa is safe. She asked me to call you. Relief flooded through me so intensely that my legs gave out and I sank to the floor. Thank you, I managed to say. Can I speak to her? There was a shuffling sound, and then Vanessa's voice came on the line. It worked, she said, sounding both exhausted and exhilarated. They arrested him. They found your laptop and everything else he stole, and his mom is being investigated too. They found evidence she was involved in the harassment. Are you okay? I asked. I'm okay, she confirmed, scared about what comes next, but okay. What comes next is that you don't have to face it alone, I told her. Neither of us does. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence for a few minutes, processing what had happened. Ryan was in custody. The nightmare might actually be over. Zoe sat down beside me and put an arm around my shoulders. You did it, she said. You both did. I nodded, tears forming in my eyes. It's really over? The worst part is, Zoe said with a small smile, now comes the healing. I thought about everything I'd been through. The accident, the betrayal, the months of of fear and pain, and then I thought about Vanessa carrying a new life, finding the courage to break free. Maybe that's what healing really looked like, not just recovering from past wounds, but helping others avoid the same fate. I'm ready, I said, and for the first time in months, I truly believed it. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in months. Zoe was already up making coffee when I stumbled into her kitchen. So what happens now? She asked, sliding a mug toward me. I shrugged. I honestly have no idea. I guess I need to talk to the police again, figure out what charges they're filing against Ryan. My phone buzzed with a text from Officer Ramirez asking if I could come to the station to give a formal statement. I texted back that I'd be there in an hour. Zoe offered to drive me, but I told her I needed to do this part alone. The police station was busier than I expected for a weekday morning. Officer Ramirez met me in the lobby and led me to a small interview room with uncomfortable plastic chairs and fluorescent lighting that made my head hurt. Ryan's being charged with breaking and entering, theft, harassment, and making threats, he explained while setting up a recorder. His mother is also facing charges for aiding and abetting. We found text messages between them planning some of the harassment. I nodded, trying to process it all. What about Vanessa? Is she okay? She's staying with a friend for now. She gave us a lot of useful information. He paused the recorder. Off the record, she's pretty shaken up. Said she had no idea how deep this went until recently. After giving my statement, which took nearly 2 hours, Officer Ramirez walked me out. You'll probably need to testify if this goes to trial, but with the evidence we have, his lawyer will likely push for a plea deal. I thanked him and headed outside, blinking in the sudden sunlight. As I was waiting for my Uber, I got a text from an unknown number. It's Vanessa. Can we meet again? Same coffee shop at 2? I hesitated but replied yes. Part of me was still cautious, but after yesterday, I felt like I could trust her. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Vanessa was already there, looking more relaxed than yesterday but still tired. She'd pulled her hair back in a ponytail and was wearing an oversized sweater despite the warm weather. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down, and thank you for yesterday. I don't think I could have done it without knowing you were backing me up. How are you feeling? I asked. She placed a hand on her stomach, scared, relieved, confused, all of it at once. She took a sip of her tea. Ryan's mom has been calling me nonstop. I blocked her number, but she keeps using different phones. What's she saying? That I betrayed her son, that I'll regret this, that she'll make sure I never see a penny of child support. Vanessa's voice trembled slightly. I'm not even thinking about money right now. I just want to feel safe. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You did the right thing for yourself and your baby. I know. It's just, I have no idea what I'm going to do next. My lease is up in 2 weeks and I can't afford the rent on my own. My parents, she trailed off. Let's just say they won't be throwing me a baby shower. I thought about my own situation. I was still staying at Zoe's, still on administrative leave from work, still dealing with my own physical recovery. But at least I was free. At least I was safe. One step at a time, I told her. First, let's make sure you have somewhere safe to stay. We spent the next hour looking up resources on our phones, women's shelters, housing assistance programs, support groups for single mothers. I even called Zoe, who suggested Vanessa talk to her therapist who specialized in domestic abuse cases. Before we parted ways, Vanessa looked at me with tears in her eyes. Why are you helping me? After everything I did, helping Ryan break into your place, sending him that voicemail, because you didn't know the whole story, I said simply. And because when you did, you chose to do the right thing even though it was scary. The next few days were a blur of police calls, meetings with the district attorney's office, and helping Vanessa find temporary housing. Mark called to tell me HR wanted to meet again. Apparently the police had contacted them about the fake emails, and they were reconsidering my administrative leave. The meeting went better than I expected. Deborah from HR actually apologized, which I'm pretty sure caused her physical pain based on her expression. They offered to reinstate me immediately with back pay for the days I'd missed. I accepted but negotiated to work remotely for another week while I sorted out my living situation. I finally went back to my apartment, with Zoe insisting on coming along. The place felt different somehow, tainted by the knowledge that Ryan had been there, gone through my things. I started packing immediately. You're not staying here? Zoe asked, watching me throw clothes into a suitcase. I can't. Not after everything. Besides, the lease is almost up anyway. I'd been putting off finding a new place because of medical bills, but now it felt urgent. That weekend, Zoe helped me apartment hunt. We found a small one-bedroom in a secure building with actual working security cameras. It was a bit further from work, but closer to the physical therapy center. The rent was slightly higher than my old place, but it felt worth it for the peace of mind. Moving day came, and I was surprised when not just Zoe showed up to help, but also Mark from work, Dr. Chen from physical therapy, and even Walter, the Uber driver who'd helped me that day. Apparently, Zoe had put out a call for help on social media, and people actually responded. You've got more friends than you realize, Zoe said as we carried boxes up to my new place. As we were unpacking, I got a call from Vanessa. She sounded excited. I got approved for the housing assistance program. I can move in next week. It's a small studio, but it's in a safe neighborhood, and I can afford it on my salary. That's amazing, I said, genuinely happy for her. Do you need help moving? Actually, yes, if you're offering. I don't have much stuff, but she paused. Ryan's mom showed up at my friend's place yesterday. She somehow found out where I was staying. She didn't do anything, just sat in her car watching the house. It freaked me out. My stomach tightened. Did you call the police? Yeah, but by the time they came, she was gone. They said they'd increase patrols in the area, but she sighed. I'll just feel better when I'm in my new place where she doesn't know the address. I promised to help her move and suggested she talk to Officer Ramirez about getting a restraining order against Linda. After we hung up, I told Zoe about the situation. That woman is unhinged, Zoe said, shaking her head. Like mother, like son, I guess. The next day, I got a text from Officer Ramirez asking me to come to the station again. When I arrived, he looked more serious than usual. We have a situation, he said, leading me to the same interview room as before. Ryan made bail yesterday. My blood ran cold. What? How? I thought with all the evidence. His mother posted it. It's high, $50,000, but she managed it. He's under strict conditions. No contact with you or Vanessa, GPS monitoring, surrender of passport. But I wanted you to know. I nodded numbly. Does Vanessa know? We notified her this morning. He hesitated. There's something else. We found some concerning searches on Ryan's laptop. He was looking up your work address, Zoe's address, information about your physical therapist. He was planning something, I said, my voice barely audible. It looks that way. We can't prove intent, but combined with everything else. He slid a card across the table. This is the victim advocate assigned to your case. She can help you with getting a restraining order, safety planning, all of that. I took the card, my hand shaking slightly. Just when I thought it was over, just when I was starting to feel safe again, I called Vanessa as soon as I left the station. She already knew about Ryan making bail and was as freaked out as I was. I'm staying inside until moving day, she told me. My friend's boyfriend is staying over too, just in case. Good plan, I said. I'll check in with you tomorrow, okay? That night, I barely slept. Every noise made me jump. I kept checking my new security system, making sure the doors and windows were locked. Around 3 a.m., I got a text from Zoe. You up? Can't sleep either. I called her instead of texting back. This is ridiculous, I said when she answered. He's out on bail for one day and I'm already a nervous wreck. Want me to come over? She offered. I thought about it but shook my head even though she couldn't see me. No, I need to learn to feel safe in my own place. Besides, you have work tomorrow. tomorrow. Call me if you need anything. Seriously, anytime. The next few days passed without incident. I met with the victim advocate who helped me file for a restraining order against both Ryan and his mother. I went back to work, though I still jumped every time someone walked behind my desk unexpectedly. Mark noticed and started announcing himself before approaching my workspace, which I appreciated more than he knew. Vanessa's moving day arrived. I met her at her friend's place early in the morning. She didn't have much, just clothes, some kitchen items, and a few pieces of furniture. We loaded everything into the small moving truck she'd rented and headed to her new apartment. As we were unloading boxes, Vanessa suddenly froze, staring at something across the street. I followed her gaze and saw a familiar car parked under a tree. Is that? I started to ask. Linda's car, Vanessa confirmed, her voice tight with fear. How did she find this place? I didn't tell anyone the address except you and the housing program people. I pulled out my phone to call the police, but before I could dial, the car started and drove away. She's just trying to scare us, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. She probably followed us from your friend's place. We finished moving Vanessa in, making sure all her windows and doors were secure before I left. I made her promise to call the police if Linda showed up again. On my drive home, I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see Linda's car following me. I didn't see her, but the feeling of being watched lingered. When I got home, there was a package leaning against my door. No shipping label, no return address, just a plain brown box. My first instinct was to call the police, but then I thought I was being paranoid. It was probably just something Zoe had dropped off. I brought the package inside and carefully opened it. Inside was a framed photo of me, taken recently, outside my new apartment building, written across it in red marker, I know where you live now too. My hands shaking, I called Officer Ramirez and sent him a photo of the gift. He said he'd send someone right away and told me not to touch anything else in the package. While waiting for the police, I called Vanessa to warn her. She didn't answer. I tried again, still nothing. Panic rising, I called Zoe. Can you try calling Vanessa? I asked as soon as she picked up. She's not answering me, and I'm worried Linda might have gone back to her place. Zoe tried but got no answer either. I'm going over there, she decided. I'll call you when I get there. The police arrived at my apartment and collected the package for evidence. They took my statement and promised to check the building's security cameras. Just as they were leaving, my phone rang. It was Zoe. Vanessa's fine, she said immediately. Her phone died and she was napping. But listen, there's something weird. When I got here, Linda's car was parked down the street again. I took a photo of it and the license plate. Send it to me, I said. I'll forward it to Officer Ramirez. After hanging up, I paced my apartment feeling trapped. This couldn't go on forever. We couldn't live our lives looking over our shoulders, jumping at every noise, afraid to answer our doors. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. You think you've won. You haven't. A restraining order is just a piece of paper. I forwarded it to Officer Ramirez, who confirmed it came from a burner phone, but was almost certainly from Linda or Ryan. He suggested I stay somewhere else for a few days, but I refused. I was tired of running, tired of being afraid. The next morning, I had an idea. I called Vanessa and Zoe and asked them to meet me for lunch. Over sandwiches at a deli far from our usual spots, I laid out my plan. We need to turn the tables, I said. They're watching us, following us, trying to scare us. What if we start documenting everything they do? What if we make it impossible for them to harass us without getting caught? Zoe looked skeptical. How exactly? We set up our own surveillance. We keep detailed records of every incident. We install dash cams in our cars. We never go anywhere alone. And most importantly, we make sure the police know about every single violation of the restraining order. Vanessa nodded slowly, like building a case against them. Exactly. Right now, they think they can scare us into silence. They think we'll be too afraid to fight back. But there are 3 of us and 2 of them, and we have the law on our side. We spent the next hour planning. Zoe knew someone who worked in security who could help us set up better cameras. Vanessa had a friend who was a paralegal who could advise us on documentation. I would coordinate with Officer Ramirez to make sure everything we collected would be usable as evidence. As we were leaving the deli, Vanessa suddenly grabbed my arm. That's Ryan's car, she whispered, pointing across the street. Sure enough, Ryan's blue sedan was parked in a loading zone, and inside, Ryan and Linda were watching us. Instead of ducking away or running, I pulled out my phone and started recording. Zoe and Vanessa did the same. We stood there, 3 women with our phones pointed directly at them, documenting their violation of the restraining order. Linda noticed first. She nudged Ryan, who looked up and saw us. For a moment, they just stared back. Then Ryan started the car and peeled away from the curb. Got it, I said, stopping the recording. License plate and everything. Clear violation of the restraining order. We sent the videos to Officer Ramirez immediately. Within an hour, Ryan had been picked up and was back in custody for violating the conditions of his bail. Linda was brought in for questioning but released with a warning. Over the next few weeks, we stuck to our plan. We documented everything. When Linda showed up at Vanessa's workplace, Vanessa was ready with her phone camera. When someone slashed my tires again, my new security camera caught Ryan in the act. When Zoe received threatening emails, she traced the IP address back to Linda's home network. Each incident was reported, documented, and added to the growing case against them. Ryan's bail was revoked after his 3rd violation. Linda was finally charged with stalking and harassment. The district attorney called me one afternoon with news. Ryan had accepted a plea deal. He would serve 18 months for the break-in, theft, and harassment, followed by 5 years of probation. He would also be required to complete anger management and stay at least 500 feet away from me and Vanessa at all times. Linda was offered probation and mandatory counseling. It's over, I told Vanessa when I called to share the news. Really over this time. She was quiet for a moment. Do you think they'll ever leave us alone, even after all this? I don't know, I answered honestly, but I do know we're not afraid anymore, and that's what matters. 6 months later, I was finally cleared by my physical therapist to stop using my cane. My spine would never be the same, and I still had bad days when the pain was almost unbearable, but I was walking on my own again. My jaw had healed enough that I could eat normal food, though I still couldn't open my mouth as wide as before. Vanessa had her baby, a little girl she named Lily. She was doing well as a single mom, with help from her friend and, surprisingly, her parents, who had come around after meeting their granddaughter. Zoe had started a support group for survivors of domestic abuse, which met weekly at a community center. I joined sometimes, sharing my story when I felt up to it. As for me, I was taking things one day at a time. I had moved again to a bigger apartment in a different part of town. I'd been promoted at work. I'd even gone on a few dates, though nothing serious yet. One evening, as I was walking home from the grocery store, no parking lot proposals this time, I realized I hadn't looked over my shoulder once, hadn't checked for familiar cars following me, hadn't felt that crawling sensation of being watched. I wasn't naive enough to think Ryan or Linda had changed. People like that rarely do, but they no longer had power over me. I had taken it back piece by piece with help from people who believed me when I needed it most, and that was enough. Not a perfect ending, but a real one. Not complete healing, but progress. Not fearlessness, but courage. One step at a time.